Hello again. Yeah. Joe, we'll just let him know that I screwed up the intro. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Rossinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Please be sure to download the app, share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content. And if you like what Joe and I do, we go live Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time on social media. So we're on X, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. Help us out. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Let's spread the word, especially about this conversation we're about to have. Because Joe and I like to think, as you know, our conversations with everyone are important. This one in particular, and you'll know why in a second, is we think of the utmost importance. And we're being joined today by Maria Keffler. And Maria has written a new book that's available from Sophia Press, Desist, DeTrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. Joe, I don't know about you. I think that's an important topic nowadays to be discussing. So, Maria, we're very grateful that you came on our show to discuss the book. Thank you very
Thank-
much.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here. I appreciate being able to have the conversation.
Absolutely. And just for everybody out there who's not familiar, Maria Keffler is a co-founder of Advocates Protecting Children, which serves and supports churches, schools, organizations, families, and individuals who seek facts, and we'll talk about that, facts and guidance on responding to gender ideology and activism. Ms. Keffler is also co-founder of the Arlington Parent Coalition, a watchdog group in Arlington, Virginia, which works to safeguard parents' rights and children's safety in public education. She is an author, speaker, teacher, a background in educational psychology. Ms. Keffler has fought to protect children from unethical activism. We'll talk about that too. And dangerous policies around sexuality and transgender ideology since 2018. So, Maria Keffler, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, our sister.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Absolutely. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joe Ressinello and we'll get started.
Maria, we always begin with a prayer to Our Lady in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, for you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, Maria, Joe and I began this project, The Front Line with Joe and Joe, in 2018. And this was one of the first topics that we kind of got into. And to be truthful with you, before that, I didn't know that much about it. And I don't want to say it was new at that point, because it probably wasn't. And you're going to go into the history of that in this discussion. But it was new to me. And frankly, I couldn't believe, I'm just going to, tell you, as a friend, I couldn't believe an adult would sit across from a desk like an educated, say, principal, anywhere from Hawaii to Maine, and look at a 10-year-old who is completely innocent and basically convince them that their gender was not the gender of who they think they are or who they think they should be. At that point, I'll be honest with you, maybe I'm just a caveman. I don't know. I just couldn't wrap my arms around that. And then since the show began in 2018, it's progressed. It's everywhere. It's in every state. And there are people who will look you square in the face. Smart people, educated people, thinking they're doing the right thing. Many of them are sincere, which is crazy, to be truthful with you. They'll look you square in the face. They're smart, and they think that this is actually a good thing. I can't agree with them. That's why you're here, and we're so glad you're here. But let's begin the conversation with this. You use the term gender cult. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, we picked that word cult very specifically for the title of the book. It may seem a little sensational, but it is not. What you're talking about, those adults who are educated, who are smart, who really believe in this, they've been indoctrinated into a cult. It's been a very systematic rolling out of these policies, these ideas. And so cults do 8 things to attract and recruit members, and trans hits every single one of them. When we first started seeing this happening, looking at the way kids were being pulled into it and the way their loyalty was being cut off from their families, and they've been really sucked in via the GSA clubs at school, the Gender Sexuality Allies or Gay Straight Alliance, sometimes called equality clubs. I would venture to say every public high school and probably middle school and possibly elementary school in the nation has one now. These are boots on the ground for pulling kids in. We talk to kids who've been through this and come out of it, and they say, I got sucked in at school. People came and said, oh, come and be an ally and come to this club. And cults will find vulnerable people who are looking for answers. They're looking for belonging. They feel somehow like their lives are not where they wish they were. That's the first tactic, is find those vulnerable people. The kids who get sucked into this are vulnerable, overrepresented with autism. Some estimates are putting it at 65-70% of kids who are getting sucked into this are on the autism spectrum. Lots of reasons why that's a possibility, but they have various struggles and weaknesses that someone's saying, oh, you feel like you don't fit in because you're not actually a girl, you're actually a boy, and we need to get you medicalized so that you'll feel like you fit in. Nefarious things like that are pulling kids into this, giving them a false hope, offering them a chance to escape themselves. Who of us, when we were going through puberty and adolescence, wouldn't have loved to be someone else? Nobody goes through puberty and adolescence and just feels like it's a breeze, great time, would do it again. No, it's a difficult time. But trans comes in and tells these kids, "Oh, you're suffering because you're actually trans." And it is 100% a cult that adults and kids have been indoctrinated into.
No, absolutely. Maria Keffler is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please go out and buy her book, Desist, DeTrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. Now, we always encourage you to support not only our Catholic authors, but also the publishers. So please buy it from Sophia Press. We'll put a link in the description so that you can get a 15% discount because you know Joe and Joe. Maria, I'm reminded, just as a quick comment on what you said, I'm reminded what Jesus said when he said, woe to him by whom sin comes to these little ones. I'm probably butchering that, but I think you get the gist. I have to stop getting angry because when you talk about pulling kids into this, and particularly autistic kids who obviously are suffering to begin with, all right, with autism, and as Joe mentioned, that principal, that so-called educated person sitting across from a parent or a child and bullying them, which we'll get into bullying later in the conversation, that's what I'm reminded of. And my only response really needs to be because I'll tell you what the Newark, New Jersey response to to these adults, these adults who do this to children, what the North Jersey response should be. But obviously, we can't do that as Christians. And I pray for these people's conversion because not just for the children, 'cause obviously we pray for them, okay, but for the people that do this to them, it's outright disgusting. Now, in my mind. I could come up with all I want. We could call them neo-Marxists, and they're just using these vulnerable kids and weak-minded parents to further an ideology. But I'm going to throw it over to you. Where did this all come from? What are the roots of this? I don't even know what to call it. I'm just going to throw it over to you, Maria.
Well, it's the medical scandal of the 21st century. That's a good place to start. It's a multi-tentacled beast that's come out of a number of places. We could look at the sexual revolution. We can look at the mental health industry. We can look at the physical health industry. We can look at greed. We can look at the LGBTQ movement. There's all kinds of places this arose from. But where gender came from was in the 1960s. A psychologist named John Money, who was notorious for abusing a couple of kids in particular, he took the term gender away from linguistics and applied it to people. Prior to that time, the word gender was a linguistic term. Some languages, Romance languages, French, Spanish, Macedonian, their nouns have gender. Latin also does. at that time, that's what gender meant. It referred to a linguistic term. He took it, started applying it to people. All through my life, it was synonymous with sex. You fill out a form, what is your gender, male, female? Just thought it was synonymous. It's no longer synonymous. Now, gender is referring to what you think you are inside. There's no real definition for it because any fifth grader can tell you you can't use the word that you're trying to define in the definition. But activists do this all the time. Oh, your gender identity is what you feel about your gender. That doesn't say anything. It's really your personal preferences and your likes and dislikes. It's your personality. But activists are taking this and saying, you know what? If you are a girl, but you don't like shopping, you might actually be a boy. If you're a boy and you don't like to play football, you might actually be a girl. It's adopting these regressive sex-based stereotypes that we've been trying to get away from for more than 100 years and applying them in spades and telling kids you're either a Barbie doll or a G.I. Joe. And I've seen graphics that say exactly that. If you're not a Barbie doll and you're not a G.I. Joe, you're somewhere in between. You're not actually male or female. It's just gobbledygook.
Well, yeah, I've heard about Mr. Money, and so I'm glad you brought that up. Maria Keffler is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Desist, DeTrans, and Detox: Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. Please buy the book from Sophia Press. You can click the link in the description. Maria, where else can our audience members buy the book?
You can get it at Amazon and also at my organization's website, advocatesprotectingchildren.org.
Yeah, given the way everything's going out there, I'm actually surprised Amazon hasn't taken it down just based on the title. When you talk about how they try to silence everybody on this issue, because our side, I hate to say it like that, Maria, but it is an us and them proposition. Okay,
Yeah.
the people that are promoting this are them, and I don't want to be them. I want to do nothing but fight them. And the Amazons of the world and Google and Facebook all come down on the side of them and try to shut people like us down. And I'm sorry, I'll say it from now to the day I die. Thank God for Elon Musk, and thank God that he bought X. All right, because at least on X we don't have to worry if Facebook or YouTube takes you down. Joe Resinello.
You mentioned about like how they define the term gender. I mean, I'm a 54-year-old man. I've lived in the world, like I'm married 11 years. I have 5 children. I work, I went to college. I've lived in the world. And I don't understand some of these terms. Like sometimes people will make, they'll make reference to these terms. I don't even know what they are. I'm educated. I don't know what they are. And they defy science. Like this is the thing. Like again, where you just say, like, how could you refer to yourself in the plural tense? Like, that's crazy. Like this is not me being mean, and I'm not mean to anybody. Honestly, I'm just looking at it, stepping back as a person, and I'm being honest. I don't know what you mean by that. Like, talk a little bit about that because it's just it's loony. Like
Yeah.
like if you step back from it and you're just like if I told this to say my mother who's 84, has no idea what's going on with regard to this, she would be like, get out of here. Like she wouldn't even believe it. But it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maria, I just want to say also, because Joe mentioned science, I'm going to throw it right back to you. This is how bad it's getting. Fako scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson, okay, go on, I think it was Bill Maher or one of those shows, and actually tries to say, as a scientist who's always lecturing us about science, you religious people you don't look at science, and he says this issue goes beyond XX and XY chromosomes. And I'm like, what if, and I just, just as a little comment on what Joe Resinello said before we throw it out to you. See, this is what we're up against. You enlist a Fako like him to actually try to give it some scientific heft. In the meantime, he's saying, well, this goes beyond science and chromosomes. I think you know where I'm going. I'm throwing it over to you, Maria.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for you not understanding a lot of the lingo. One of them is that is another thing that cults do. They create a new language, a new vocabulary that the good people on the inside of the cult know and understand. And if you don't know and understand it, you're one of the bad people on the outside of the cult. So that's intentional for creating these terms that are nonsensical. There's also this Orwellian newspeak feel to it. You know, Orwell said, if thought can corrupt language, then language can also corrupt thought. And when you're creating these nonsensical terms and forcing people to use them, you are confusing and obfuscating reality. And that's really both where this is coming from and what it's reflecting back to. There's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as objective reality. You know, we hear that all the time in postmodern thought. Your truth is your truth, and my truth is my truth. And we know that's not accurate. And by the way, if someone tells you there's no such thing as truth, he is asking you not to believe him. I heard a fantastic pastor talking about the whole postmodern movement there. But yeah, you're right. It's absolutely crazy. It is crazy making. And people have been both forced and cajoled into accepting this. There are people who they know very well what they're doing is wrong, and they are doing it for financial gain, for political gain, for power. But there are also a lot of people who have just been sucked into it. Teachers go to teacher trainings. Teachers have to have professional development all the time. The activists around the trans movement have been very strategic at getting policy into teacher training, into librarians training, into medical professionals training, saying, hey, this is all backed up by science, and these are the things we've got to do. There's no science behind it. Giving some of those educators and professionals the benefit of the doubt, they don't have time to go chase down all of the research studies. You know, you believe the experts. It's why parents, when they have a child who comes out and says, hey, I'm trans, they go to the principal, they go to the pediatrician, they go to the school counselor, they say, what do we do? All of those people say, you have to affirm this or your child's going to commit suicide, which is not true. It is very difficult to get data on suicide. I can go into that if you want to, but that's kind of going off in the weeds. That is an emotional manipulation because it is the worst thing a parent can imagine is having a child commit suicide. So all these so-called experts have been told, tell the parents this because that's the truth. Well, many of these so-called experts are just believing what they've been taught because they haven't done the legwork to go look and see, you know what, that's not true. That is not true. They should do the legwork. They're responsible for doing it, but many of them simply haven't.
Right, and it's just beyond belief. The book is Desist, DeTrans, and Detox: Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. The author Maria Keffler is with Joe and Joe at the front line, and the author of the publisher is Sophia Press. So please click the link in the description so that you could get a discount because you know Joe and Joe. And please go out and read this book. We all need to get educated on this. And I'm going to tell you my big thing, Maria Keffler, is there is no argument, any reasonable. We're asking people to use their God-given reason when it comes to sifting through this and not be emotional, which is a lot to ask in and of itself because there's emotions. It's always people crying and lying, like you said, about the whole suicide thing. If you quote unquote misgender somebody, you're going to cause their death. So that that's the bullying tactic, the pressure tactic. Okay. But we've won. I say we, but you understand, I think, where I'm going. We've won every argument. We know their arguments. Their arguments now come down to, and they all say it. So they went into the back room, they concocted their argument, which is, why do you care?
Mm.
Things like that. Okay. Your truth, my truth. That's your truth. I mean, these are all the way that the neo-Marxists have convinced them that they need to make their arguments. Talk about this. At some point, you just the same way on abortion. At some point, you stop arguing and you just say, whoever has the power says no. You just say no. When they cry, scream, riot in the street, whatever the case might be, you just have to say no because you're lying and I'm not arguing with you anymore because you don't want to hear reasonable argument. You don't want to hear the rational the rational argument. You just want to be emotional. You want what you want. Well, what we want is to say no to you And we're to stop you from trying to indoctrinate these kids and lie to these kids. And ultimately, they're the destroyers of these kids. You know where I'm going, Maria. I'm going to throw it over to you.
Well, the whole why do you care or it's none of your business, stay out of it, that doesn't hold water. Back when we had slavery in the American South, should the North have just, it's not your business, stay out of it? When psychotherapists were lobotomizing mental health patients, should everyone else have just said, I don't have a mental health patient in my family. Why should I care? I'll just stay out of it. When children are being forced to work in sweatshops around, in other countries, we hear this all the time. Don't buy clothes that are bought from a country that uses child labor in their sweatshops. Well, why do you care? That's not your child. You're not a part of it. We care because it's wrong. We care because we have a mandate from God to care for the least of these, to protect the widow and the orphan. We have a job to promote truth and to protect those who can't protect themselves. So that's my answer, my response to that. Why do I care? I care because I care about all children. I care because I care about families, because I see this is damaging not just that kid, but that kid's family, that
Hmm.
kid's entire family, the entire school. When a child says that he or she is transgender, and the school says, oh, the parents don't know about it yet, so we got to keep this secret. They've just told every kid in that school to lie to their parents. And we know that anybody who separates a child from parents has a nefarious agenda. Nobody separates a child from parents for any ethical reason except in the most extreme abuse, which is rare. So I would say, don't tell me that it's not my business. It is my business because this is damaging our society. This
Yeah,
is putting men in women's sports. And women are no longer winning awards and scholarships in their own sports.
right.
That's why I care.
Yeah, and the thing is too, then and my argument to a lot of these people is, then what do you care if I'm raising my what do you care? What do you care if I'm telling my son there's only two genders? Then butt out by your own standards. See, this is what I mean, Maria, is that they lose every argument because quite frankly their arguments are a bunch of lies. So when you use some reason, some logic to confront a lot of the lies that they tell, okay, like there is no truth. My response to that, by the way, is always, are you stating that truthfully? But they can't rationally get around it. Um, and that's why I say the importance of saying, well, guess what? The answer is no. And Michael Knowles was right. We need to eradicate transgenderism in our law, in our language. Like you said, corporate boardrooms, companies are starting to move away from DEI. They know it's a loser. And you're in Arlington, Virginia, okay? So you know that in Virginia is like one of the battlegrounds for this, okay? Thank God. And parents there stepped up. In Michigan, they stepped up also. Muslims and Christians side by side saying, we don't want this for our kids. So it's a very hopeful thing. But the common denominator is that those people in Virginia and Michigan and other places are saying, no.
Mhm.
Don't have to make an argument. The answer is no. Maria Keffler is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Desist, DeTrans, Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. The book is available at Sophia Press. Joe, we have a few minutes before the break. Where do you want to go?
I'm going to talk about the medical institutions, the medical schools, the medical field in general, the journals. And I invite our listeners to do some research. I've done some. We have a lot of people on the show, people like Maria. We've talked about this topic before. The life expectancy of a transgender person it's like 37, give or take. How could you encourage somebody to go into a lifestyle that you don't even make 40? How? That's what I would put forth to any adult. Like, it's like encouraging someone to use crystal meth. You're not going to live long. Like, if you're a meth addict, you're not going to live long. It's a fact. And this is also a fact. The life expectancy of transgender individuals is less than 40. That to me says that's an unhealthy lifestyle. I want to first put that out. But secondly, the medical field has been co opted by the culture, it's been bullied. And about a year ago, you probably know the gentleman's name. I can't recall it off the top of my head, but he was a surgeon out of Houston at a hospital where the law in Texas basically forbid children to have medical transitions. Yet the hospital was ignoring the law, and he was a whistleblower. This was a doctor who felt like he was going around I can't recall his name off the top of my head. You may remember it. Um, the point is, the medical field has allowed themselves to be bullied by the culture. And that's a fact. And you mentioned lobotomies. There is no question in my mind, and I want to talk about this on the other side of the break a little bit more, that when this is all said and done, we will look at this as a disgrace as we look at lobotomies. Like, we can't even believe that that was actually something the medical profession in America pushed and did. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. One of the reasons, like the American Academy of Pediatrics has been behind this, is when they've got a policy, oh, we need to figure out how to respond to anorexia or how to respond to multiple sclerosis. They put together a task force, and they did that for gender. They said, we need to figure out what our policy position is. So they put together a task force. Well, who joins that task force? People who are interested in the topic. So they had a 37-member task force, the American Academy of Pediatrics, who wrote their trans policy, which is very pro-trans, and all the activism is in there. The two head writers for that, the two head doctors, both work at gender clinics. They have financial ties to gender clinics. So what's their position? It's whatever's going to drive people to the gender clinic. That's why the other 600,000 doctors in the organization were not asked. Again, many of them, they're just coming along with what the policy says. The activists have been really smart, very strategic about going after the decision makers and the policy makers and getting it into policy, even though, as you said, there's no basis for it. There's no research that supports it. There's nothing at the bottom of the bin that supports this ideology. It is a religion. It is absolutely a religion that you can believe that what's inside you is different than your sexed body, but they're trying to claim it as science when it's just in fact another cult.
No, absolutely. Maria Keffler, we're going to take a quick break here at the front line with Joe and Joe. You know, it's always funny as Catholics, they try to beat us up and say, oh, you Catholic Church tries to control your mind. They tell you what to think and everything else. I can think whatever I want. All right. Guess what? My local bishop is not knocking down my door to take my kid away. All right. If I decided that I didn't want to be a Catholic anymore. Okay. The Catholic Church proposes. But like you said, this is an intolerant cult. Religion is what it is. So they're the ones who want to bully you into thinking a certain way. So it's always kind of funny that they want to accuse, it's always projection. They want to accuse other churches and religions of being intolerant. In the meantime, these are the most intolerant people on the planet. Maria Keffler here's at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, way in the breach, and we are in the breach because we're discussing Maria's new book, Desist, DeTrans, Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. The book is available at Sophia Press, so please buy the book from the publisher, and you can click the link in the description, and it'll take you right to Sophia's website, and you'll get a discount because you know Joe and Joe. So stick around at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. We have another great segment with Maria Keffler. We'll be right back. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We are way in the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. We're being joined by Maria Keffler, and we're discussing her new book, Desist, DeTrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. It's available at Sophia Institute Press. Please go out and buy the book. We all need to get educated on this topic. Joe, do you mind if I start the conversation
Please,
for
Joe.
this one? Maria, let's talk about parents who are suffering. with this, okay? Parents, as I mentioned earlier, okay, you talk about Virginia, you talk about Michigan. Now, these are just the ones I've seen, okay? I'm sure there are other places where parents are really stepping up, okay? But a lot of parents, quite frankly, don't know what to do. I know that, I have a foster son who, thank God, is about to be our adopted son. He's 15 and a half years old. We're forming him properly because I moved to Arizona from New Jersey about 3 years ago, a little shy of 3 years ago, and I had no choice but to put him in the public school for the first semester that he was here before I could find a school for him. Okay, and it's what you mentioned earlier about over the loudspeaker, be part of the Gay Straight Alliance and blah blah blah. And I said to my wife, "Oh," I said, "we got to get him out of we got to get him out of this school." Parents are having a tough time with this because, quite frankly, they need guidance. Nobody wants to seem like an intolerant person, but parents are like, "Well, this is my kid." All right. Back off and stop trying to indoctrinate my kid. Talk about some hopeful things, the places where parents could look where they could get some support if they happen to be going through this, some guidance, if you will.
Yeah, there is more guidance out there now on the truth side and on the fact side than there used to be. Very encouraged by that. I'm going to self-promote my 501c3, advocatesprotectingchildren.org. We have lots of resources for parents, including state-specific resources if you're dealing with this. Um, we tell people that the main vectors driving trans ideology are public schools, smartphones, and social media. Uh, I don't think any kid under 18 should have social media. I'm starting to think adults shouldn't have social media either. It's just a wild west. There are influencers out there actively looking for kids. Every platform has this on it. Get your kids off social media. Smartphones, unregulated smartphones, you put that in the hand of a child, you've given every predator who has a smartphone in the world access to your child. I absolutely don't recommend it. Flip phone, non smart flip phones. You can dial, you can call, you can text. That's all a kid needs. Give them those. And I hate to say this because I was trained as a public school teacher. I was licensed as a public school teacher. I've been a proponent of public schools until 2018 when I saw what was happening there. And I can no longer say that public schools are a safe place for man, child, or beast. They are full on pushing really nefarious, dangerous policies. But parents, the advice, whether your child's gotten sucked into this or not, is the same. Maintain your relationship with your child. Keep the communication open. Be aware of what's going on in your child's life. Who is speaking into your child's life? What influences are surrounding your child? Know the friends, know the teachers, know the coaches. Be present because this stuff is slipping in under the table behind your back. It is actively undermining parents. And so you have got to be on top of it to know what's happening.
It really is. It really is a very, very frustrating thing, Maria Keffler. Joe Rossinello says on the show all the time, I pay taxes too. And if I have my kid in the public school, who the hell are you to tell me that I don't have a say in what you're telling my child? I remember, I think it was Virginia or wherever it was, and a teacher got up there because one of their new things is, who are you? What qualifies you to talk about the curriculum? It's my kid. Number one. Number two, what qualifies me is my money goes to pay your salary. Okay. So who are you to back me? This goes back to bullying. Okay. This is where you have to get right back in their face, figuratively speaking, get right back in their face and say, absolutely not. Who the hell are you that you're going to tell me that I have to back out of this conversation? I pay your salary through my taxes, and it's my kid. Like we said earlier, what do you care about what I teach my kid? That's your standard. So, I mean, these are the things that we have to do. We're so grateful to you, Maria, for coming on the show and talking about this and writing your book. And if you're just joining us, the book is Desist, DeTrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. Buy it from Sophia Press. Let's educate ourselves and let's start fighting back again. Well, in fairness, many people are. You are, Maria. You're at the front line of this. Many others need to join you, all right, in this conversation to really push back against this. You used the word earlier, nefarious. This is nefarious. And we need to protect our kids. Joe Rossinello, where do you want to go?
some states, you mentioned Virginia, but there are states that have passed aggressive laws that kind of tie people's hands behind their back. To use an example of such a law, I believe Minnesota and California, they will accept kids against their parents' wishes who want to have medical transitions. Um, I know this from, I live in New Jersey. You can't give an aspirin to a kid without their parents' permission. And there are states, just to name two, and I'm not up on all of them, you probably are much more than I, that will allow a child to do something that will cause them physical difficulties their entire life. To make that decision before the age of, you can't even vote. You can't even vote yet. You can't buy a pack of cigarettes. And you're going to make a decision, a lifelong decision, without even consulting with your parents. I can't even believe that's real. To me, that's the twilight zone. But here we are. We're in the twilight zone. Some of these same states will not permit parents to basically get a therapist to talk to their kid. It's illegal. You can look at your kid who's saying that, referring to themselves as a cat in the plural tense. To me, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I am an adult. If a young girl looked me in the face and said to me she's a cat, there's something that there's something unresolved. We have to get to the bottom of this. That requires therapy. That's legal. Talk about that. Because to be honest with you, I think that's criminal, to be truthful with you.
Yeah, yeah.
It is criminal. And I've said I hope to see some Nuremberg style trials for some of the doctors.
Let me
And
stop you right there, because someone heard that. Will hear that. And what they're saying in the car, you're a fascist. And what I say to that person, no, no, no. She's not a fascist. This is criminal. This is criminal. You don't do this to kids. I had to just interject there because that's what someone hears you say that. They're like, oh, she's crazy. She's a fascist. No, she's not crazy. Sorry, I'm crazy. That's why I just jumped in. I'm
no,
sorry.
I appreciate you saying that because I get it. Sometimes I hear myself talk and I think, man, I sound like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. But when I started digging into this, the deeper I dug, the sicker I got. And I couldn't even start digging into this for more than an hour or two at a time because I would literally be in tears, sobbing at what is happening to kids. They are cutting the breasts off of 14 and 15-year-old girls. Joanna Olson Kennedy has a grant from the National Institutes of Health. You can look this up. She's got a grant to study medicalizing kids for transgender ideology. Right now, that grant goes as young as 12 years old. She has cut breasts, healthy breasts off 12-year-old girls who thought they were trans. She's trying to get that grant lowered to the age of 8. They're giving puberty blockers to kids. Lupron is a puberty blocker. That's what it's being used off-label for now. Originally, it was given to adult male sex offenders in prison to chemically castrate them. A judge in Michigan determined that that was cruel and unusual punishment, so they could no longer give Lupron to adult men in prison. Then the company, the pharmaceutical company, gave it to women with endometriosis, adult women. There's a class action lawsuit against the maker of that drug. These women have migraines, demineralized bones. They're in wheelchairs. They've had these deleterious effects from Lupron. So they can't give it to adult male sex offenders. They can't give it to adult women. Who are they giving it to now? Children. They're giving that to little children to stop their puberty. This is a medical experiment. That is all it is, and it is a money grab because once you get these kids on Lupron, cross-sex hormones, they've had their genitals amputated or altered, they are medical patients for the rest of their lives.
And
That's
it,
criminal.
And it is criminal. I wish Maria Keffler was joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. I wish people would understand, educate themselves. I'll give you an example. Story I've told at the front line with Joe and Joe. In the movie The Killing Fields, okay, there's a scene at one of the communist camps, and the little children are being indoctrinated by the party operatives, the Khmer Rouge operatives, right? And there's a poster board, and they have a stick figure of what is obviously a stick figure of a man, stick figure of a woman, and the woman's hand is holding a stick figure of what is a child. And they give the crayon to one of the little kids, and the little kid comes up and crosses out the parents, okay? And they all applaud like this. The operatives applaud. That's always their goal. That is, oh, I wish people would. It has nothing to do with a child's well-being on their part, and they're actually concerned about kids. The whole goal is to destroy the family. That's why, like, how in the world can a state like California or Oregon or Washington, how could you justify doing this to a child without saying, getting on the phone and calling the parent? How do you justify that? The only way to justify that is, I've always made the point, these are Marxists, and they are using these children, okay, who obviously need therapy, as Joe Rossinello said. They are using these children, and their confusion as teenagers, okay, to as another battlefront against the family. I wish people would understand that this is not some sort of wonderful, oh, we just love people and we're tolerant. This is a violent Marxist, what would you call assault?
So,
Comment on that, Maria, if you don't mind.
yeah, no, it absolutely is. And it has been spread into the air, the water, it's everywhere. I teach at a high school, a Christian high school. Most of these kids have had a Christian education, most of their upbringing. You know, some of them homeschool, public school, whatever, but most of them have been raised in Christian homes and Christian education. Last week, I teach psychology, got to the part of the book that talks about sex and gender, and I'm like, I need to lay this out for you. Here's what the culture is teaching. Here's what the truth is. I teach it that way. But before I started the lesson, I gave each kid in my class a piece of paper with several questions on it. I said, totally anonymous. All answers are acceptable. I said, tell me where you're at with these things. And I had statements like, I believe homosexuality is an acceptable lifestyle. I believe people can be a different gender on the inside than on the outside. Half of my students, I have 22 in that class, 11 of them are cool with homosexuality and transgenderism. These are kids that have been raised in Christian homes. Where are they getting this? They're getting it in the movies. They're getting it on the radio. They're getting it on social media. They're getting it from their friends and their friends' parents. It is everywhere. When I tell you that they are coming for your children, I am not being sensational. I'm not trying to be a fear monger. I'm stating a fact. They are coming for our children.
Maria, this goes back in my mind, it goes further back than that. I remember it was in the 90s. I was listening to AM talk radio in New York, and I remember it like it was yesterday, okay? Because the homosexuals were protesting in New York City. They're holding signs. All right. I actually called the radio station to talk to Jay Diamond at the time. I remember I was a big fan, and talk radio was big back then. And we were talking about it on the radio, and I said, Jay, I said they're holding up signs that are saying we're coming after your children. Why do we not acknowledge that when they say, "Oh, you're just trying to sow fear"? You're holding the sign. I didn't make it for you. I didn't go down to Michael's Arts and get the board and the crayons and all that to make your stupid sign. You're saying it. But then they want to try to bully you into not reacting to that. Well, I'm going to react to that. Joe's going to react to that. You obviously are reacting to that because through your organization and your book, and for those of you just joining us, Desist, Treat, DeTrans, and Detox, getting your child out of the gender cult. We have to fight this fight. Okay, and I'll tell you this, and I'm going to throw it over to Joe Maria. In this past election, and we don't endorse anybody here because our radio station is a 501c3, so we're not getting into that. But one common denominator for a lot of people who differ on a lot of issues in voting was this issue. You're not coming after my kids, okay? And one party insisted that it's okay to go after your kids, and another party said, or basically was being vocal and saying, no, this issue cuts across a lot of things in America because of the fact that they're my kids. your kids, Joe's kids, okay? And this is a unifier. I wish people would look at this as a real major front in this culture war, okay? This will unify people because most people, like I said earlier, whether you're Muslim, Orthodox Jew, conservative Christian, or Catholic, this doesn't fly. I'd like a quick comment, if you don't mind, Maria.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more parents recognize what's happening and stand up, the faster we will put the brakes on this. But people have to realize you're going to be vilified when you stand up. People are going to call you a bigot and a transphobe. You got to get past Karen about that. Those
Yeah.
are ad hominem. Those are just attacks on the person because, as you said, they don't have good arguments. They can't win the argument. So they throw slurs, they throw slogans. We've got to develop a little thicker skin and just say, hey, I'm doing this to protect families and kids. Yell at me what you want to yell at me. It doesn't bother me.
No, absolutely. Joe Rassinello.
I want to talk about detransitioners. We've had a number of people on the show that kind of talked about that in depth. First comment, when talking to some of these people who have second thoughts, what they've communicated is when a child goes through this process, I'm talking about either chemical or medical transition, they have an expectation that this is going to meet. And what they find out is it doesn't meet the expectation. It doesn't change who you are biologically because it can't. It's a fallacy. So this leads many of these young men and women to suicide. This is not me speaking. These are experts. You could find books on it. That's the first comment I want to make about detransitioning. And I am going to predict how this is going to officially end in America. I am, Maria, if you did not know, Joe Stradamus, and I am going to put out one of my Joe Stradamus statements.
He's had some spot on predictions.
What I'm going to
I'm
say is
gonna say.
this: money moves the dial. Eventually, what is going to happen is a very rich family is going to have a tragedy, and that tragedy is going to be a detransitioner that has second thoughts. And they are going to sue a massive hospital like Boston General or a hospital in Manhattan or a hospital in LA. And they are going to take them to the cleaners. And when that happens, doctors are not going to be able to get insurance. And that's the end of this chapter, this sad chapter in America. Write it down, America. And then everyone is going to look at each other and say, how did this happen? Oh my goodness gracious. This was horrible. All the doctors are going to be like, this was horrible. Your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with you. We have said at Advocates Protecting Children, it's going to take lawsuits. It's going to take lawsuits turning the tide on the insurance policy. So I 100% back you, Joe Stradamus. I think you're right. It's heartbreaking to me that it's going to have to go there. And I hate to say or even think this, but I think you're right about the suicides. Kids who have gone through this and the chemical and the medical castration, they are left with no fertility quite often. They're left incapable of experiencing sexual pleasure. Their health, their bones are demineralized if they've been on Lupron. It's horrific. It is a nightmare Frankenstein kind of medicine that's being practiced right now. And I can't wait until doctors are called to account for it. And at that time, when that happens, everybody's going to start saying, I knew all along this was wrong. Oh yeah, I was against this all along. Um, and I think you're right. It will stop. I never imagined when I got involved with this 5 years ago that it would still be ongoing now because there is nothing supporting it. But as we know, lies can carry the day until they can't anymore. And eventually truth comes to the surface. It is going to come to the surface.
Joe,
No,
I just want to
absolutely.
piggyback on that because interestingly enough, and I'm not an expert, but again, we've had a number of people on the show that talked about this. Countries like France and I'm pretty sure Denmark. If I'm wrong, please come, let me know. The correctersons out there, let me know. But I think it's France and Denmark. They have done this already. They're ahead of this, and they're backing off on children. Have you heard that? So to me, that says, like, if I'm a doctor, I'm supposed to be smart. You're looking at medical precedents. You're supposed to be studying and looking at things that are going on in the world. Don't you think this is not some backwater country? France is a modern country. They've tried this and they're backing away from it. So why is America diving in? Because they're being coerced by the culture. They're listening to MSNBC and CNN and nonsense. I'm going to use the term, other than the science. Scientists in France are saying, no, 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 this is not good. We did this and we're backing away. Yet we're full steam ahead. We're listening to some pundit on MSNBC. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Europe is by and large backing off on this. I mean, Sweden's been at the forefront of homosexuality and gender, and they had a 30-year longitudinal study that came out. They're able, because they have a national health service, they're able to follow everyone who's been transitioned, and they found that people who've gone through sex reassignment surgery ultimately have a 19% higher suicide and attempted suicide rate than those in the general population. So Europe is backing off. Why are we not backing off? You're right, in part because of the culture, in part because of the activism around it. It's also because it's financially very lucrative. 3 years ago, I looked up market research reports on sex reassignment surgery. They all predicted it's going to be a $1.5 billion industry by 2026. That's just genital surgeries. Now, I have since been told that I need to look that up again because it's actually much higher than it was predicted 3 years ago. So doctors are making money hand over fist with this. I look at it kind of like getting into the stock market. You're supposed to get in the stock market when stocks are low and sell when they're high, right? But most people do it the other way around. They buy high and then sell low when they're panicking. I think we're at the top of a bubble and doctors are raking in so much money. They're like, I'm just going to keep raking it in until I can't anymore. And it's unethical. It's absolutely greed based. And it is heartbreaking what is happening to kids.
No, absolutely. Maria Keffler is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Unfortunately, we only have a little bit of time left, Maria. We could talk to you for hours about this. This is a great and important conversation. Her new book, Desist, DeTrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult. Please buy it from the publisher, Sophia Press. You could also buy it from Amazon. Maria, before my last question, just very quickly, social media, your website, where folks can buy the book. Go over that real quick, and then we'll get into one final question.
Yeah, Sophia Institute Press. Amazon has the book and also advocatesprotectingchildren.org. That's my 501(c)(3).
And are you on social media or on X or anything?
Yep. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Getter, we're on Instagram.
Awesome, awesome. So we would encourage everybody to follow Maria and her organization and what she's got going on. This way, we could stay educated on all the developments, particularly on the lawsuit front. Because, as Joe said, as you mentioned, Maria, you start costing people money. Guess what? Guess what's going to stop happening? Doctors are going to stop doing this because, well, I made my money, can't anymore because the law says I can't. Maria, some people would accuse us. I'm sure could hear some voices out there. We're heartless. We don't care about these kids and what they're feeling and what they're going through. Of course we do. We're here because we want to protect those kids from the lies that other people are telling them. Talk about, we have a couple minutes left, Maria. Talk about the proper Christian, this predominantly Christian audience, the proper Christian approach to this. We have to fight the fight. We have to fight against the forces of evil. But these are children. How would you recommend parents who are going through this? How would you recommend engaging their children from like what you know and all the information that's out there?
Yeah. First, stay calm. And that is so hard, but stay calm. And that's just good advice in parenting. When you react, what in the world are you doing? It scares your kid. They're going to back off. They're not going to trust you. They're not going to engage. So stay calm. You can and should always validate people's feelings. And what that looks like is saying, wow, you feel like you're a different sex on the inside than the outside. That must be really hard. That must be a really difficult feeling. I can tell you're in pain. That's validating the feelings, but you don't validate the faulty reasoning. You take the reasoning to logic and you say, it is not possible for someone to be a different sex on the inside and then on the outside. Every cell of your body is coded with your sex chromosomes. And so I understand you're in a lot of pain. I get that you're feeling that way, and I want to help you with that. We need to find a way to help you with that that's based in reality, because what you're talking about is a fantasy that's been created so that people can make money. I want you to come to know who you really are and value who you really are, but I get that you're in pain. So that's the difference. Always validate feelings, never validate faulty reasoning. And get help. You know, there are trustworthy therapists out there. They're kind of hard to find. I talk in the book about how to vet a therapist and see where they really are. If you need help with your parenting, with your family, with this particular relationship, start with your priest, start with your church, start with, I need some help here. Can you recommend somebody? And get the good, ethical, solid help you need.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's one of the things that we have among so many things that we have to start doing. Unfortunately, people are coming around to this, and the enemy has quite frankly, they got a head start.
Mhm.
In a straight up race, they're halfway to the finish line, and we got a lot of catching up to do. One of the ways we do that is raise what Joe and I have said from 2018. There's a few reasons why we do this show. One of which is to raise the consciousness as best we could of our fellow citizens when there are, let's quite frank, call this what it is, Maria Keffler. This is an atrocity. And
Mhm.
we have to play our part in preventing this atrocity from moving on any further. Maria Keffler, like I said, we could talk to you for hours about this. We're so grateful you came on the front line with Joe and Joe to have this conversation. So we're going to post this everywhere. It's going to air at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. I would encourage everybody to share it, whether you're listening to it on the radio, whether you're going to watch it on X or Facebook, Rumble, or YouTube. Please share this conversation. Let's help to move this conversation along and protect these kids. Maria Keffler, thank you so much for joining us here. We really appreciate it. You're welcome back here anytime, needless to say.
Thanks so much. It was great to talk with you both today.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Maria. And remember, her book is Desist, DeTrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult, available at Sophia Press. Click the link in the description. You'll get a discount because you know Joe and Joe. Thanks once again for joining us here at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.